The Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. It was the oldest and most powerful organization in the known universe. 700 different species sent their representatives to Station Primora, a massive space station that floated in neutral space far from any home world. Here, wars were discussed, treaties were signed, and the fate of entire civilizations was decided through careful debate. The station itself was a wonder. Crystal towers rose from platforms of living metal. Gardens filled with plants from 1,000 worlds provided oxygen and beauty. The main chamber could hold 10,000 beings at once, and today it was nearly full. Admiral Park Taiho stood at the human delegation's podium. It was small compared to the others. Humanity had only joined the assembly 18 years ago, and most species still considered them primitive. Aggressive primates, they called them. Lucky monkeys who had accidentally discovered faster-than-light travel. Nothing more than a footnote in galactic history. Taiho was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the Terran Navy for 35 years. He had seen combat. He had lost friends. He had made difficult decisions that still kept him awake at night. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Krath ambassador stood at the center of the chamber. His species was terrifying to look at. They stood 3 meters tall, with bodies covered in bone-white armor that grew from their skin. Their faces had no lips, just rows of sharp teeth behind transparent flesh. 4 red eyes watched the chamber with cold intelligence. The Krath had been conquerors for 2,000 years. They had destroyed 17 civilizations and enslaved dozens more. No one challenged them. No one dared. The Dominion of Krath has made its decision, the ambassador announced. His voice was deep and harsh, translated by the devices that everyone wore. The human colony designated New Bizin exists within space that we have claimed. The 40 million humans living there have 2 choices. They can surrender unconditionally and accept Krath rule, or they can die. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species expressed concern. Others simply watched with curiosity. A few seemed almost entertained by the situation. Taiho felt his hands tighten into fists. New Bizin was not just a colony. It was a home. Families lived there. Children played in its parks. Old people sat on balconies and watched the alien sunset. 40 million souls who had trusted that Earth would protect them. We have positioned 312 warships around the colony, the Krath ambassador continued. Our weapons are aimed at their cities. If the humans do not surrender, we will begin bombardment. He paused, and Taiho could swear the creature was smiling. We are not unreasonable. We will give the human government time to consider our offer. 1 standard cycle should be sufficient. 1 standard cycle. In galactic terms, that was 14 Earth months. The Krath were being generous by their standards. Most species took years to make such decisions. The assembly itself sometimes debated for decades before reaching any conclusion. Around Taiho, the other human delegates shifted nervously. Ambassador No Yunji leaned close to him. What do we do? She whispered. We cannot fight 300 ships. We cannot surrender those people. What option do we have? Taiho did not answer her. Instead, he pressed the small communication device in his ear. Sol, this is Primora Station. We are live. The Krath have issued their ultimatum. 312 ships surrounding New Bizin. 40 million civilians. They are demanding unconditional surrender. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice came through, clear and steady. Understood, Admiral. Stand by for response. The Velthari delegation watched from their elevated platform. They were ancient beings made of light and memory, so old that they had seen the birth and death of stars. Their speaker turned to the one beside it. The humans are communicating with their home world, it observed. How curious. What do they hope to accomplish? Perhaps they wish to say goodbye, the other replied. This is often the way with young species. They do not understand that some battles cannot be won. Across the chamber, other species shared similar thoughts. The Morwani, gentle philosophers who had never known war, watched with sadness. The Threxians, warrior people themselves, watched with something close to respect. At least the humans would die with honor, thought the Krath ambassador clicked his teeth together in amusement. I see the little species is calling home. How touching. Perhaps their leaders will teach them the wisdom of surrender. Minutes passed. The chamber grew restless. Some delegates began private conversations. Others simply waited, curious to see how this small drama would end. Then Park Tayo received his response. He listened carefully. His expression did not change. When the message finished, he took a deep breath and straightened his uniform. Admiral? Yoonji asked. What did they say? Taiho did not answer her. Instead, he walked to the edge of the human delegation's platform and activated his speaker. His voice carried across the entire chamber, silencing every conversation. The Krath Dominion has issued an ultimatum to humanity, he said. You have threatened our colony. You have surrounded our people with weapons of destruction. You have given us 14 months to make our decision. The Krath ambassador spread his arms wide. And have you made it? Do you surrender? Taiho's eyes met the alien's 4 red ones. The United Terran government has reviewed your ultimatum. As of this moment, exactly 47 seconds after we received your demands, a state of total war exists between humanity and the Dominion of Krath. The chamber exploded into chaos. Species that communicated through color changes flared bright crimson with alarm. Those that used sound produced shrieks and howls of disbelief. The Velthari flickered rapidly, their ancient minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The Krath ambassador's amusement vanished. You cannot be serious. You have 47 ships in range. We have 300. Your decision is suicide. Perhaps, Taiyo replied calmly. But it is our decision to make. You had 14 months. Why would you decide in seconds? Taiho looked at the alien with something close to pity. Because you threatened our children. And that, Ambassador, is a mistake no species should ever make. He turned and began walking toward the exit. Behind him, the chamber remained in chaos. No one could understand what had just happened. No one could believe it. For 12,000 years, the assembly had operated on certain assumptions. Wars were declared after careful thought. Battles were planned over generations. Species considered every option before committing to violence, but humanity had just thrown all of that away. In 47 seconds, they had chosen war against an enemy they could not possibly defeat. The Velthari speaker turned to its companion. What have we just witnessed? The other flickered with uncertainty. I do not know, but I believe we have made a terrible mistake. What mistake? We assumed the humans were like us. We assumed they would act with reason and patience. It paused. We were wrong. Outside the chamber, Park Tayo walked alone through the crystal corridors of Station Primora. His face was calm, but his heart was racing. He knew what was coming. He knew the cost would be terrible, but he also knew something that the Krath did not. Humanity did not start fights, but they always finished them. Deep beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province, the most powerful room on Earth hummed with quiet tension. The United Terran Command Bunker had been built to survive anything. Nuclear war, asteroid impacts, alien invasion. Its walls were 10 meters thick, and its systems could operate independently for 50 years. Now President Shominho sat at the head of a long table. Around him sat the joint chiefs of every major nation. Generals from Korea, America, China, Russia, Europe, and Africa. Admirals who commanded the combined human fleet. Scientists who had built the weapons they hoped they would never use. General Kang. Yuna stood before a massive holographic display. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes burned with cold fire. She had been a soldier for 40 years. She had fought in the border conflicts, the resource wars, and the first contact skirmishes. She had buried too many soldiers to count dot, and now some alien species thought they could threaten human children. 312 craft capital vessels, she reported. Standard battle formation around New Bizen. Their weapons are hot but not firing. They are waiting for our response. President Cho leaned forward. What are our options? Commander Beek Sujin stepped forward. She was young for her rank, barely 40, but she was the finest tactical mind in the fleet. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, bringing up ship positions and fleet movements. Our nearest force is the indomitable battle group under Admiral Ru Hagen, 47 ships. They can reach New Bizen in 6 hours using emergency warp. She paused. Sir, I should be honest. 47 against 300 is not a battle. It is a massacre. Can we evacuate the colony? Someone asked. Negative. The Krath have the planet surrounded. Any civilian transport would be destroyed before it reached orbit. What about reinforcements? Sujin shook her head. Our main fleet is scattered across human space, protecting other colonies. We could gather perhaps 200 ships, but it would take 3 weeks to assemble them. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the math. In 3 weeks, 40 million people would be dead or slaved. The Krath would not wait. General Kang Yuna spoke into the silence. There is one other option. All eyes turned to her. The contingency. The word hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew what it meant. The contingency was humanity's darkest secret, a plan so extreme that it had never been used. It was designed for one purpose only: total war against an enemy that threatened human survival. President Cho closed his eyes. General, if we activate the contingency, there is no going back. We will be committing our entire civilization to this war. I understand. Sir, the economic cost alone could cripple us for generations. Sir, with respect, we are already committed. Kong stepped closer to the table. The Krath did not attack some minor outpost. They attacked a colony with 40 million people. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, every species in the galaxy will see us as weak. They will come for us one by one until there is nothing left. President Cho looked around the table. He saw fear in some eyes, determination in others. But no one disagreed with Kang's assessment. What exactly does the contingency require? Kang nodded to Sujin, who brought up a new display. It showed Earth and all its orbital facilities, shipyards, factories, mining stations, resource processors. Full mobilization of all industrial capacity, Sujin explained. Every shipyard begins producing warships. Every factory converts to military production. Every citizen capable of working contributes to the war effort. We have run simulations. Within 12 hours of activation, we can begin construction on 18,000 new warships. Gasps echoed around the room. 18,000? Someone repeated. That is impossible. It is not impossible, Kang replied. It is merely extremely difficult. Humans have done this before. In the Second World War, America alone produced over 300,000 aircraft in 4 years. The entire planet working together can accomplish far more. President Cho stood. He walked to the window that showed a simulation of Earth hanging in space. His home. His responsibility. When the Krath attacked, he said quietly, they believed they were dealing with a weak species. A young civilization that would bow before their power. He turned to face the room. They were wrong. We are not weak. We have never been weak. We simply prefer peace. He walked back to the table. But when someone threatens our children, our families, our future, we do not negotiate. We do not debate. We do not wait 14 months to make a decision. He looked at General Kong. Activate the contingency. Send word to Admiral Park at the assembly. And get me a direct line to Admiral Rue. Within minutes, the orders went out. Across Earth and all human colonies, the word spread. War. Total war. Every man, woman, and child had a role to play. In orbit above Earth. Shipyards that had been building civilian transports suddenly changed their production lines. In factories across 6 continents, machines that made consumer goods were reconfigured to produce weapons and armor. In schools, children were sent home so their parents could report to war stations. And in the bunker beneath the mountains, President Cho spoke to Admiral Ru Haijin through a secure channel. Admiral, you are ordered to proceed to New Bizen at maximum speed. You will engage the craft fleet and protect those colonists by any means necessary. On the screen, Ru's face was calm. He was an older man with white hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had served in space for 30 years. He knew what these orders meant. Understood, Mr. President. We will do our duty. Admiral ... Cho paused, struggling for words. I know what I am asking. 47 ships against 300. I am asking your crews to sacrifice themselves. Sir, every person in this fleet volunteered. We knew this day might come. We are ready. Cho nodded slowly. Then may God go with you, Admiral. With respect, sir, where we are going, God may not want to follow. Ru allowed himself a small smile. But the craft will learn that humans fight hardest when we have nothing to lose. The connection ended. In the bunker, President Cho sat down heavily. Around him, officers and advisors rushed to implement the contingency. The greatest military mobilization in human history had begun. General Kang approached him. Sir, are you all right? No, he admitted. I just sent thousands of soldiers to their deaths. I may have started a war that could destroy our species. Kang placed a hand on his shoulder. Or you may have saved 40 million lives. We will not know until it is over. And if we lose? Kong's eyes hardened. Humans do not lose, sir. We may fall. We may be broken. We may be pushed to the edge of extinction. But we always get back up. Always. She turned and walked toward the command center, where 1,000 details demanded her attention. Behind her, President Cho remained seated, carrying the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. Somewhere in the darkness of space, 47 ships raced toward 300. And on Earth, the forges of war began to burn. Ambassador No Yoonji had spent her entire career explaining humanity to aliens. It was not an easy job. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates and abundant resources. They had developed slowly over millions of years, their societies growing like gentle plants reaching toward the sun. Humanity was different. Earth was a violent world. Earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, mass extinctions. The creatures that survived on Earth did so by being tough, adaptable, and relentless. Humans were the most successful of all those creatures. They had conquered every environment on their planet. They had survived every disaster. They had even survived each other. Now Yoonji stood in a quiet corridor of Station Primora, surrounded by a delegation of Moani. They were gentle beings, standing on 6 thin legs with bodies covered in soft blue fur. Their faces had large eyes and no mouths. They communicated through vibrations that their translator devices converted to speech. We do not understand, their speaker said. The vibrations carried confusion and fear. The mathematics are simple. Your fleet cannot win. Your species will be destroyed. Why would your leaders choose this path? Yunji looked at them with a mixture of sadness and pride. Do you know much about Earth's history? We have studied your archives, the Morwani replied. They are troubling. So much violence. So much death. Your species has killed billions of its own kind. Yes, we have. We fought wars over territory, over resources, over religion, over ideas. We fought wars simply because one group of humans looked different from another. Yunji paused. We are not proud of this history, but we learned from it. What could you possibly learn from such horror? Yunji smiled, though there was no happiness in it. We learned how to fight. We learned how to survive. We learned that the side with the biggest army does not always win. She began walking slowly down the corridor, and the Morwani followed. Through the transparent walls, they could see the vast chamber of the assembly, still filled with chaos and confusion. Let me tell you about a battle from our history, Yunji said. Long ago, on an island called Korea, a small fleet of ships faced an invasion force 20 times their size. The enemy had hundreds of vessels. The defenders had only 13. 13? The Morwani vibrated with disbelief. How could 13 ships fight hundreds? Their commander was a man named Yi. He chose his battlefield carefully. He found a narrow strait where the enemy's numbers meant nothing. He used the tides and currents to his advantage, and he fought with a ferocity that the enemy had never seen. What happened? Yi destroyed over 100 enemy ships without losing a single one of his own. 13 against hundreds. The invasion failed. The Morwani were silent for a moment. This is remarkable, but surely such a victory was unusual. No, Yunji said quietly. It was not unusual at all. Our history is filled with such stories. Small groups defeating larger forces through courage, cleverness, and pure determination. We call them last stands. Desperate battles where defeat seemed certain, but humans refused to accept it. She stopped walking and turned to face the alien delegation. You see, the Krath made a mistake. They looked at our numbers and saw weakness. They looked at our technology and saw inferiority. But they did not look at our hearts. Your hearts? Humans are not like other species. When we are comfortable and safe, we can be lazy and peaceful. We build art and music and philosophy. We dream of the stars. But when we are threatened, when someone tries to hurt our families, something changes inside us. Yunji's voice grew harder. We become something else. Something that does not know fear. Something that does not accept defeat. Something that will burn worlds to protect those we love. The Morwani speaker took a step back. You speak of this as if it is admirable, but it sounds like madness. Perhaps it is madness. Perhaps it is the result of evolving on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. But it is also the reason we are still alive. Yunji gestured toward the assembly chamber. Look at the species gathered here. How many of them have ever faced extinction? Very few. Most civilizations grow peacefully. Those that face extinction usually do not survive. Exactly. But humans have faced extinction many times. Ice ages, plagues, nuclear weapons. Each time we survived. Each time we came back stronger. She paused. The Krath think they can threaten us into surrender. Hey, do not understand that threats only make us more dangerous. In another part of the station, Admiral Park Tayo was having a similar conversation with the Valkyrie. The ancient beings of light floated around him, their forms shifting and changing as they tried to understand. Young one, their speaker said, we have watched civilizations for 12,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have seen species make decisions like yours, and we have watched them be destroyed. Then you should understand why we must fight, Tai-Hao replied. We do not. The logical choice is to negotiate. Accept losses. Preserve what you can. Live to fight another day when you are stronger. Tai-Hao shook his head. That is not how humans think. We do not abandon our own. Not ever. Even if saving them means destroying yourselves? Yes. Tai-Hao's voice was firm. A human who abandons their family is not worth saving anyway. Our strength comes from our bonds to each other. If we break those bonds to survive, we lose everything that makes us human. The Velthari flickered with something that might have been confusion or admiration. You are a strange species. In 12,000 years, we have never encountered anything like you. Is that good or bad? We do not know yet. Ask us again when this war is over. Back in the corridor, Yunji had finished her explanation. The Morwani stood in silence, processing what they had heard. So you believe you can win? Their speaker finally asked. I believe we will not surrender, Yunji replied. Winning and not surrendering are different things. We may lose ships. We may lose soldiers. We may even lose colonies. But we will never stop fighting. The Krath can kill us, but they cannot defeat us. Not as long as a single human draws breath. And if they kill every human? Yunji's eyes were cold. Then they will have to kill every human. And by the time they finish, they will wish they had never started. The Morwani exchanged glances with each other. Their soft blue fur rippled with emotion. Your species frightens us, the speaker admitted. Good, Yunji said. That means the Krath should be terrified. She turned and walked away, leaving the aliens alone in the corridor. Behind her, the Morwani watched in silence. They had come to this conversation hoping to understand humanity. Now they understood all too well. These humans were not just another young species stumbling through the galaxy. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. And survivors never stopped fighting. The stars above. New Bizin had never looked so threatening. 312 craft warships hung in orbit like a wall of death. Their weapons pointed at the peaceful cities below. 40 million people waited and prayed, not knowing if help would come. Then space itself seemed to tear open. 47. Human ships burst out of warp in perfect formation. The flagship Indomitable led the way, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Behind it came cruisers, destroyers, and frigates. Each ship carried crews who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never return home. Admiral Ru Heijun stood at the center of the Indomitable's bridge. Around him, officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They were ready. Admiral, his communications officer reported, the Krath are hailing us. Put them through. The view screen flickered, and the Krath fleet commander appeared. He was larger than most of his kind. His bone-white armor covered in marks of rank and conquest. Human Admiral, the Krath said, his voice dripping with contempt. You have brought 47 ships against 300. Either you are very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both, Ru replied calmly. This is your final chance. Surrender now, and we will allow your ships to leave. Continue this foolishness, and you will all die. Ru looked at the alien commander for a long moment. Then he smiled. Let me tell you something about humans. When we fight, we do not fight to win. We fight until the enemy cannot fight anymore. Whether that takes a day or a century does not matter. Pretty words. But words do not stop weapons. No, they do not. Ru turned to his tactical officer. All ships, execute formation Hensando. The Krath commander's eyes widened. What are you doing? On the view screen, the human fleet began to move. But instead of spreading out or retreating, they accelerated directly toward the center of the Krath formation. "They are charging," the Krath commander muttered. "They are actually charging." His officers looked at him with confusion. No species charged into a superior force. It went against every principle of galactic warfare. Battles were fought at low range, with careful maneuvering and gradual attrition. But the humans were not fighting a galactic battle. They were fighting a human battle. The two fleets met in a storm of fire and metal. Human ships dove between craft vessels, getting so close that the larger ships could not bring their main weapons to bear. Missiles streaked through space. Lasers carved through armor. Explosions bloomed like flowers of destruction. On the Indomitable, the bridge shook as enemy fire struck the hull. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in from every section. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, an officer reported. "Sealing emergency bulkheads. Weapons status? Primary batteries at 60%. Missile tubes 1 through 4 destroyed. 5 through 8 still operational. Keep firing," Rue ordered. "Target their command ships. Break their formation." Around the flagship, human ships fought with savage determination. The destroyer Jeongju, commanded by Lieutenant Yoon Hana, had lost its main engines early in the battle. Instead of retreating, she ordered her crew to maximum speed on auxiliary power and drove directly into a craft carrier. "All hands, this is the captain." Hana's voice came over the ship's speakers. "It has been an honor serving with you. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of." The Jeongju struck the carrier's hangar bay and detonated its reactor core. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 3 more. Craft vessels nearby. Similar stories played out across the battlefield. Human ships that lost weapons used themselves as battering rams. Crews fought through hull breaches and fires to keep their vessels in the fight. Wounded soldiers refused to leave their posts. The craft had never seen anything like it. Their commanders tried to adapt. They ordered their ships to maintain distance, to use their superior numbers to surround and crush the humans. But the human fleet refused to cooperate. They kept pushing forward, kept getting close, kept fighting with a fury that seemed almost insane. 3 hours into the battle, the Kraf had lost over 100 ships. The humans had lost 22. But the surviving human vessels were damaged, their crews exhausted, their ammunition running low. On the Indomitable, Admiral Rue surveyed the battlefield. His ship was barely holding together. The bridge had taken a direct hit an hour ago, killing half his officers. He himself had a deep cut on his forehead, and his left arm hung useless at his side. "Admiral," his remaining tactical officer said, "we have 12 ships still combat capable. The Kroth have approximately 200. We cannot win this fight." Who said anything about winning? Rue replied. He pointed at the planet below. "Look at New Bizan. It is still there. The Krath have not fired a single shot at those cities. As long as we are here fighting, they cannot touch those people." He turned to face his crew. They were tired. They were wounded. They were dying. But not one of them looked ready to give up. "Signal all ships," Rue ordered. "New formation. We are going to hit their flagship." The remaining human vessels gathered together. 12 ships against 200. It should have been impossible. It should have been suicide. It was both. But as the human fleet charged one final time, something unexpected happened. The Kroth fleet began to break apart, not from human attacks, but from something else: fear. The Kroth commanders had finally understood what they were facing. These humans were not rational enemies who could be negotiated with or intimidated. They were something far more dangerous. They were an enemy that would never stop. "All Krath vessels retreat," the enemy fleet commander ordered. His voice was shaking. Retreat immediately. We cannot fight this. We cannot beat this. One by one, the Krath ships turned and fled. Some jumped to warp immediately. Others took longer, harassed by the pursuing humans until the last moment, when it was over. Admiral Rue stood on the damaged bridge of the Indomitable and looked out at the battlefield. Wreckage floated everywhere. Human and Krath debris mixed together in a graveyard of metal and fire. 94 Krath ships had escaped. 17 human ships remained. Rue opened a channel to the planet below. New Bazan, this is Admiral Rue Hajun of the Terran fleet. The enemy has been driven off. You are safe. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the channel filled with sounds. Crying, cheering, prayers of thanks in a dozen languages. 40 million people. Still alive, Rue allowed himself one small smile. Then he turned to his crew. Get damage control working. Contact the fleet. Find out how many wounded we have. He paused. And someone tell Earth that we are still here. The battle is won. But the war has just begun. Behind him, through the shattered view screen, New Bizan continued to turn slowly beneath peaceful. Stars dot the battle of New Bizan was over. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never forget. The recording spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species on 1,000 worlds watched the Battle of New Bizan with a mixture of horror and fascination. They saw human ships diving into impossible odds. They saw crews fighting through explosions and fire. They saw a species that treated death as an inconvenience rather than a defeat. On Station Primora, the Galactic Assembly watched the footage in complete silence. Even the Krath ambassador, usually so proud and arrogant, sat motionless as the final moments played out. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, the Velthari representative broke the silence. Its voice carried across the chamber, soft but clear. We have watched many wars over 12,000 years. We have seen species fight and die for countless reasons. But we have never witnessed anything like this. The Krath ambassador shifted uncomfortably. They were lucky. Our commanders made mistakes. Next time will be different. Will it? Admiral Park Taiho stepped forward to the human delegation's podium. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes showed that he had not slept since the battle began. But his voice was steady. Ambassador, while you were watching our fleet fight at New Bizan, something else was happening. Something you missed. The Krath's 4 red eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean that the Battle of New Bizan was not our response to your ultimatum. It was merely the opening act. Taiho activated a holographic display. It showed Earth and the surrounding space. But something was different. The orbital shipyards that had held perhaps a dozen ships now held hundreds. Massive structures were under construction everywhere. In the 12 hours since you declared war on humanity, our entire civilization has mobilized, Taiho explained. Every factory on Earth has converted to military production. Every shipyard has begun building warships. Every citizen capable of contributing is working around the clock. He zoomed in on the display, showing rows upon rows of ships in various stages of completion. Current production rate, 18,000 new warships within the next 6 months. And that number will only grow as we bring more facilities online. The chamber erupted into noise. Species shouted questions. Others simply stared at the display in disbelief. This is impossible, the Krath ambassador sputtered. No civilization can mobilize that quickly. You are lying. Am I? Taiho smiled coldly. Send your scouts. Check our systems. You will find that every word I speak is true. The Morwani representative stepped forward, its blue fur trembling. How can this be? Your species has only been in space for a few decades. How do you have the capacity for such production? Because we have been preparing for this moment since we first looked at the stars, Taiho replied. We saw the galaxy and its empires. We saw species like the Krath, who believed strength gave them the right to rule. And we knew, deep in our hearts, that someday they would come for us. He turned to face the entire assembly. We hoped we were wrong. We hoped we could join the galactic community in peace. We hoped that the age of human warfare was behind us. But we prepared anyway, because hope is not a strategy. The Velthari flickered rapidly. You have been building this capacity in secret? For how long? Since first contact. Every civilian shipyard can convert to military production in hours. Every factory maintains blueprints for weapons manufacturing. Every citizen receives basic training in emergency response. Taiho's voice hardened. We call it the contingency. It exists for one purpose, to ensure that no species can ever threaten humanity without consequences. The Krath ambassador tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. You cannot defeat us. We have 8,000 ships in our full armada. 8,000. Then build more, Taiho said quietly. Because in 6 months, we will have 18,000. In a year, we will have 50,000. In 5 years, we will have more ships than every other species in the galaxy combined. He paused, letting his words sink in. We do not want this war. We never wanted it. But you forced our hand. You threatened our children. You gave us no choice. On the display, the view shifted to show the Krath homeworld. Red markers indicated human fleet positions. They were already spreading out, moving toward Krath space. Your armada is mobilizing, Taiho continued. We know this. We expected it. But before they reach New Bizon, our advanced fleets will reach your colonies. Before they can reinforce your defensive lines, we will have cut your supply routes. And before this war is over, your dominion will cease to exist. The chamber fell silent. Even the most ancient species, beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, could not find words. The Krath ambassador looked at his aides. They looked back at him with fear in their eyes. The pride and arrogance that had defined their species for 2,000 years was crumbling before their eyes. What do you want? The ambassador finally asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Unconditional surrender, Taiho replied. Your fleets will stand down. Your weapons will be destroyed. And you will never threaten another species again. And if we refuse? Taiho's eyes were cold as steel. Then we will continue building ships. We will continue training soldiers. And in 10 years, there will be no Krath left to refuse anything. 3 months later, the Dominion of Krath signed the surrender documents in the same chamber where they had issued their ultimatum. Their full armada, 8,000 ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, never fired a single shot. They had seen the human fleets coming. Endless waves of new ships, crewed by soldiers who had volunteered knowing they might die. And they had understood, finally, what the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to grasp. Humanity could not be intimidated, could not be threatened, could not be bullied into submission. They could only be destroyed. And destroying them would cost more than any species could afford to pay. On the first anniversary of the Battle of New Bizon, General Kang Yuna stood before a memorial wall. The names of every soldier who had died in the battle were carved into black stone. 2,847 names. Mothers and fathers. Sons and daughters. Heroes who had given everything. Behind Yuna, new recruits stood at attention. Young people from Earth and the colonies, ready to take their oaths of service. In 47 seconds, Yuna said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd, we chose war. But we did not choose it out of anger. We did not choose it out of hate. We chose it because somewhere in this galaxy, our people were afraid. And humans do not leave their family behind. She turned to face the stars that shone through the memorial's transparent ceiling. Let the galaxy remember this. We come in peace. We seek friendship. We dream of a future where all species work together. But if you threaten our children, if you attack our homes, if you try to break our spirit, you will learn what every enemy of humanity has learned throughout history. Her voice hardened. You will learn that we do not know how to surrender. You will learn that we do not know how to give up. You will learn that the only way to defeat us is to kill every last one of us. She paused. And even then, you will not have won. Because our children will remember. Our grandchildren will remember. And they will come for you. They will always come for you. The stars continued to shine overhead, indifferent to the small creatures beneath them. But those small creatures had proven something important. In a galaxy filled with ancient empires and powerful species. The deadliest force was not the largest or the oldest. It was the one that refused to lose. It was humanity, and the galaxy would never forget it.